in the case of dryers that keep stopping mid-cycle, the circuit breaker's fine, but everything will just be running normally and then suddenly stop halfway through the cycle. What would you look at for that one?
The first thing I would recommend to check is to try the cycle again, but do it on a time dry feature. On newer dryers, it's kind of hard to find the time dry just because they want you to use the sensor dry because it's a lot more efficient, but it's on there somewhere. So find the time dry, select, say, a 60-minute cycle, run a load of close, and if it makes it all the way through, then the next thing that you want to look at is if you're using a sensor dry, make sure the feet are adjusted properly. Find out which side of the dryer your moisture sensor's on. Watch the clothes as they tumble and make sure they're passing over that moisture sensor. That's the main reason that a dryer usually stops mid-cycle. Let's see, the other thing that could cause that, it could be a bad moisture sensor. It's very rare because the moisture sensor itself is essentially two pieces of thin metal that when an article of wet clothing touches the two pieces, it basically kind of conducts between one to the other. And so that's how it works. So when the clothes are dry and it doesn't conduct between one metal strip and the other, that's when it knows it's dry. So it's rare that it's actually the sensor. Let's see. So yeah, I would say those would definitely be the two things I would look at stopping midway. If it stops midway on a time, even on the timer cycle, the sensor's not an issue because time dry bypasses the sensor. So it could be stopping halfway because the motor's overheating, especially in Samsung. I've seen that happen more often than in other brands. And yeah, that's in I'd say 95% of cases, it's going to be one of those three things.
So if someone was to run it and it starts to work fine on the timer cycle, and it could be the motor overheating, would you recommend a replacement, or is that generally sort of either call a professional or consider a new dryer?
So the motor overheating would happen on any cycle, whether it's a sensor or the time dry. And the motor, that can really be a big pain. Yeah, for that one I would recommend calling someone, because what you have with the motor, where it connects to the blower wheel, you have a metal motor that gets hot, but you have a plastic blower wheel. And so over time, they basically weld onto each other. So I have been successful in separating the blower wheel from the motor, but more often than not, I just assume that they're going to be C's, and you either have to drill off the plastic blower wheel assembly with a hole bit on a drill, or you've got to buy not only the motor but the blower wheel and whatever else you need to connect them. So yeah, that's a repair I probably wouldn't recommend trying.